the thing that you just mentioned about like building a cult definitely like hits home with Dom and I, because we did a podcast on this guy, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a
yeah,
great book.
great book, right? So and I think one of the things that really stuck out to us was that particular point where he says the best startups are less extreme versions of cults, right? And yeah, it's something that we find really important, especially in Cambodia, um, because you can't really motivate people as much with like salary and with equity. So you have to build a culture, and if you're not able to build a culture, the startup, you don't have any believers or co-founders alongside you, and everyone else. So that's a very interesting point. But what about so you currently have one other co-founder? Have you also been on a journey of maybe thinking about broadening your co-founding team and having more kind of people come along, or is it mostly sticking with two co-founders and the rest being employees?
That's an interesting question. Um, when I think about the role of a co-founder, uh, I'm not really sure whether we really need another one or not. I think that right now my initial thoughts are that I would love to bring in another co-founder whose background is different to myself and my current co-founder, who's Kui. She handles sale, by the way, handles sales. I do product. I would love to bring in someone else who perhaps has a more technical background and can help us with the tech decisions. And I think from there, we've really got the three pillars. But off the top of my head, I'm not really sure. I think the role of a co-founder right now is to serve the employees. When you think of like a founder in a company or a CEO, you sort of have this grandiose vision of like an Elon Musk visionary leader who's leading a company, when really myself and my co-founders, we're really shoveling shit. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this on the podcast, but I'm here to serve. I serve my investors. I serve my investors. I serve my customers, and most importantly, I serve my employees. Right. My employees are actually, I like to think, above me, and my job as CEO, I don't really like the acronym, is to help them execute. Right. So yeah, to answer your question, sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. We're definitely interested in bringing someone on board as a co-founder, but I think that at the moment, our team is small enough that the two servants or the two co-founders now is enough to take care of the rest of the team. And I think as time continues, we'll explore that opportunity.
Okay. Yeah, it's one thing that Dom and I definitely we talk about with a lot more founders. We actually especially find but thinking back to Cambodia, there are actually a lot of companies here that are just one person shows, and it's only one co-founder. And yeah, that can cause issues over the long term with the business. But yeah, as you say, I mean having two is great. If you can get to 3 to 4, that can also be really useful if you want to kind of, as you said, have more segmentation on like pillars and responsibilities, and be motivating them with equity as opposed to coming in on salary mostly. So yeah. Maybe just looking out into the future a little bit more, what are you kind of planning for 2024? How is the journey looking for Gamelytics for the next year? What are some key milestones you're looking to achieve?
I think first and foremost, we just launched our MVP a couple weeks ago, and the first thing we want to do is close our first sale. That's truly the number one milestone. Like, I close my eyes at night, and that's what I think about before I go to bed. And I think that that's the true test of have we built something of value, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build something of value. And the real question is do we bring enough value that people are willing to depart with their cold cash to use it, right? So that's really the number one milestone that we're looking for. And once we achieve that, of course, the goal is to continue scaling up to a point where hopefully we are cash flow positive or cash flow neutral, or our burn is extremely low. So I would say the goals for Gamlytics are the goals that every startup sort of should have from the beginning, which is continue to build a better product and continue to find customers and scale up revenue. And I think those go hand in hand. As we build a better product and we work really closely with our users, hopefully more people hear about us and begin to use us. And with that money, we can continue to build a better product and find more users. It's really a never-ending cycle of product development and making sales. I would say right now it's just making one sale, and then the goal for 2024 is probably to hit somewhere between the 5K MRR area.
Okay. Okay, understood. And what is it like? So, I mean, so you, obviously, the company was founded, and the team was originally based in Bangkok. What was it like for you, for the team, and for yourselves, also just like transitioning to like an entirely new culture and new way of kind of working? Is that something you're used to? I'm just curious, like how that's been for you.
Yeah, I think the change has been interesting. Going from Thailand, a place that I was born and raised, I know the city and the culture inside out, to Santiago. It's been an interesting change. I think work-wise, the hours are a bit different here. People are eating dinner at 10, eating lunch at 3. So that's been a bit of a change. But in terms of work ethic, working as a team, I think that there's truly some fundamentals that are just universal, and not a lot has been different. I think the biggest part for us was probably moving here and then finding the right people here, and then doing a knowledge transfer from our old team into the new team. But ever since we sort of worked out the kinks in the first few weeks, everything has gone pretty smooth. There's definitely been a bit of a culture shock, food, language, hours. But other than that, I think that I would say startup life is the same pretty much in Thailand, in the US, in Santiago. So it hasn't really been that much of a change.
Mm-hmm. But I guess what can be intense is like the reason that you moved from to a country that you'd that hadn't lived in before is because of the company, and so you went with your co-founder, and it really then means it must mean that like the business really feels like the driving force of what's going on.
Yes. Yeah, I joke that I'm married to the business. Call my mom, call my friends. They're like, "Hey, how's life? How's your dating life? You have a girlfriend yet?" I always tell them I'm married to the company. There's no time. There's no time to explore. But yeah, I would say the business definitely is a driving force. And another reason that I forgot to mention earlier is that when we first launched was Counter-Strike, actually, most of our users were in South America. Brazil is a huge hub for Counter-Strike. Years ago, they had a great team. When we looked on our analytics, we could tell that most of our users were from Brazil, Colombia. So we saw that moving to Santiago would also bring us closer to our users, which is always better. Talk to some teams here, talk to gamers here. But then, of course, Counter-Strike 2 came out and pivoted our path. But ultimately, we first came out here to get closer to the users. But yeah, the business was definitely the driving force in moving out here so suddenly.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I think back to you, Dom.
Yeah, just I guess in just thinking about the future of the space in an ideal world, where do you see the esports industry being in the next 3 to 5 years? Would it be that there's less fragmentation? Would you see that there's a more streamlined position for gamers that are early in their careers, say middle school level, to have a clear path of becoming a professional, maybe going to the collegiate level, playing in university, and then having that flywheel effect of still working within the esports space after they graduate or after they retire as a gamer? Just kind of curious to see like your ideas of how you would think would be the best way for the industry to grow.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I have my visions and my assumptions, but I'm not really sure how the space is going to look in 3 to 5 years. I think that you're definitely right that there will be more centralization and less fragmentation in the esports space. We already see that happening. Companies like Activision are getting bought out by Microsoft. A lot of the big tech companies are realizing that Gen Z and millennials most of their screen time is in gaming, right? And they're investing a lot of their tech and time into the gaming space now. And I think that we're also seeing the formalization on the education side as well. High schools and middle schools are building out esports programs, and colleges are. I speak to some coaches actually that say they work in the college space and they actually go to high schools and try to recruit from the high schools to come to their college. So I think you're right on the mark with, students in middle school can begin to sort of pick instead of picking basketball or football, they're going to pick Counter-Strike or Dota or League of Legends and specialize in that and try to go to a D1 League of Legends school and compete in that league. And I think that there will also be opportunities to involve esports in your life, even not at the athletic level. I actually just spoke to an institution in the UK called the College of Esports. And what they are is they're a college that trains people to become esports managers, esports coaches, or esports educators. And all those people graduate from that college with an esports degree and go off to do different things in esports. So I think that the recognition that esports is a legitimate industry and there's lots of room to play a part in it is definitely going to continue to grow. And I think that we see that both on the gaming side as well as the educational side. And they're sort of building the pathway to success to incorporate esports in your life, either as an athlete or just as another job.
Great. And just kind of in parallel with that, how are you looking to adapt and reposition Gamelytics to continue your growth trajectory as as time goes on, as the industry develops? Is it just remaining flexible in as the tides change more or less, or are you what is your view on that?
Yeah, I think that we at Gamlytics definitely have a vision for how we want to be placed in the esports market. We see a fit where it's like, this is what we want to be the tool for. Of course, I think that's the goal for all companies, is to carve out their own segment in the market and serve a group of customers. But sometimes that can't happen, right? You've got to go with the tide. And I think that we're going with the tide right now as we see esports centralization happening. We're seeing esports education institutions recognize the importance of it and also understand the difficulty of managing large groups of gamers. And I think that's really the niche or where we're trying to position ourselves. It's, hey, there's no platform out there to help you do what you want to do with these large groups of gamers, right? How can you schedule practices? How can you see if they're improving? And that's the niche we're trying to serve. And it seems as if though esports is trending in that direction, which is great for us. But in 3 to 5 years, who knows what's going to happen in the space, and who knows what we're going to have to pivot to. But right now, we're definitely trying to carve out our own niche. Yeah.
And in that same vein too, are there any other competitors within the space that are doing something similar, or that you almost could also drive some inspiration from too as you grow your product?
For sure. I think that we're pretty unique in the space. I don't think there's anyone who does perhaps exactly what we're doing, but I think that there's a lot of people who are doing fragments of what an HR platform does. There's a lot of people that help with recruitment, and that's with helping middle school or high school students find college scholarships. There's people that are doing analytics and helping individual players get better to perhaps join the varsity team. There's people that are helping connect teams and gamers. If you're a team looking for a gamer, we can help connect you. But the thing that we haven't really found yet is the management side, sort of how can you create a company inside a software platform, and within that company create a Trello board of your teams, and inside that team create a Trello board of your players and get information on them and write notes and things like that, which is really what we're looking to do. Project management platforms are in construction, in business and sales, everywhere. But esports is a bit unique, and that's really what differentiates us. We're trying to become like a project management tool for esports teams. But of course, there's a lot of other competitors that we draw inspiration from that do analytics and a bunch of really other cool stuff in the space.
Awesome. And as we transition to the last part of our of the discussion, just have a couple questions I would like to ask you. And being a gamer, having the passion, having a very strong passion for the space, would love to hear what your setup is currently like. What's your hardware that you use?
Oh, that's a great question. Actually, I'm sitting right by my gaming PC right here. I've got a Toast box, I've got a toaster box case. I'm actually not quite sure about my specs. I bought it from some Chilean guy on a marketplace, and it looked in pretty good condition, and it's worked pretty well. But yeah, it's funny running a gaming company. I find myself probably gaming less than I ever have in my life. Sadly, I work some weird hours. I've got calls for in the EU, so I'm up at weird hours. I unfortunately don't have a lot of time to game. So yeah, I'm not quite sure on my specs, but I do have a setup, of course. I play with my team after work all the time. So that's a great question.
No, that's really cool. Always curious. If you, aside from PC, if you had to pick a console, which one would you choose?
I'm a PlayStation guy.
Okay.
I had a PlayStation back home, and I think it's easier to connect to a sim rig. So I'm big into F1, and the PlayStation is more compatible with sim racing, which I had back home as well. So that's why I'm a Sony for life guy.
Fair enough. Are you an avid watcher of F1 today too? Or
oh yeah, we're Kui and I, my co-founder, we're both huge F1 fans, and yeah, wake up at all hours of the night to watch the races around the world.
Yeah, how are you feeling about the Lewis Hamilton move over to Ferrari? I feel like that was
absolutely crazy. I can't wait for 2025. The 2024 season's about to start, and I already wish it was 2025. I think it's going to be so interesting to see.
So you think it's going to be the redemption year, him coming back, taking on Verstappen and taking him down, or what do you think?
I hope so. I'm actually a McLaren fan at heart. I'm a huge Lando Norris fan, and funny enough, he's a gamer. He's a huge gamer. He actually owns a gaming company called Quadrant. Maybe there's a bias there, but yeah, I'm definitely hoping for 2024 to be a more exciting season than 2023. But that's a pretty low bar.
Fair enough. Yeah, it feels like it was a one driver race in that sense. That's really interesting. With as you mentioned, being a founder, you're having to have so much of your focus on the business, but in the times that you unwind, you talked about gaming with the team, building that camaraderie, but are there any other habits or things that you do that help you stay focused every day, kind of keeping your mind on the mission or on the North Star of the direction of the business?
Yeah, I think that there's two things. I think I'm going to answer this question in perhaps two segments. One is sort of clearing my mind, which I think I've gotten better at a founder. When I first started, there was always something to do. I didn't really schedule out time or carve out time to take care of myself, whether that was going to the gym or doing exercise, which I regularly book in now. I like to play the sport called paddle, which is a mix between tennis, like tennis with glass walls. It's huge here in South America, which is great. So I schedule some time out to play paddle a couple times a week. And I think that, sure, I'm not working in those hours, but just exercising and not thinking about Gamlytics for a while definitely clears your mind. So that's the clearing mind segment. And I think the next part is the inspiration. Being a huge gamer, I play a lot of games, but more importantly, I also watch a lot of gaming. And I see esports. I watch a lot of Dota. I like to watch Counter-Strike. And I think that watching professional gaming and hearing the casters and the level of analysis they have and the insight they give into the game shows how much more there is to be done in the space in terms of bringing these analytics and these insights and literally spoon feeding them to the casual gamer, which is really nice to see. How do we take the analysis in the mind of an analyst and put that in a visually stunning way on the Gamlytics platform? So that's really how I, one, stay motivated, and two, sort of keep myself fit, both body and mind.
Great. One other question that we like to ask everyone is, what is probably one of the most important books that you've ever read, whether that's business or personal, that have really had a big impact on you?
That's a really good question. Give me a second here to think about that.
No worries.
I think one book that comes to mind, which might be perhaps an interesting take, It's a speculative fiction book by Yuval Noah Harari. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the author.
Yep.
But
Yep.
Homo Deus. Homo Deus is probably the most transformative book I've read in my life. I think that in that book, he talks about the future of humanity and how we're going to utilize information and data, more importantly, and how artificial intelligence is going to help us with so many things. And I read that book in college multiple times, actually. And it really helped me understand the value in analyzing large sets of data that we as a species are now able to collect or we have so much of, right? And I think that the things that he talked about, albeit not gaming, but healthcare, military, civilian use, really broadened my understanding of how can we utilize information to bring value to a group of people. And I think although I do that for a very specific niche, which is gaming, the overall fundamentals that he talks about in that book have been the pillar for a lot of my thoughts with Gamlytics.
Yeah, for me, I only really started reading a bit of Homo Deus. I didn't actually manage to get through it, but Sapiens had a big impact on me. He's a very unique thinker, and he's able to like crystallize such large concepts into, he's just be able to explain things very well. So yeah,
and I find I like that he's an optimist. I think that a lot of people are talking about the downfall of humanity, but when I read his books, I might be wrong here, but I really think that his outlook for humanity is a positive one. That we are going to learn how to use data and become in a more efficient civilization. So it was a very interesting read, and I agree, he's a phenomenal author. I recommend go read all 3 of his books if you can.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the one thing that's really enjoyable about having. I mean, sometimes people say we're a bit too glass half full, but when we have startup founders on the podcast, generally you have to be, in order to be a founder of something innovative, and you have to see a positive future, right? So, yeah, we definitely have that same appreciation, and especially in some of the regions that we're in as well, you do see that that positivity, like from anyone you talk to. Not maybe if you're sitting in Europe and things, you've got wars next door, and you've got like GDP growth kind of stagnating, and aging economies. It seems easier to be start to get negative about the future, but yeah, I think what we're all involved in is it's easy to see the a positive future being built.
Definitely.
Yeah. Our last question that we like to ask every single guest is, what is the most important piece of advice that you've ever been given?
That's another great question.
Yeah, we should have sent it to you before, but sometimes we just like to kind of see what the natural answer is to that.
Yeah, I think that the best piece of advice that I've been given is to, I think, do something that you enjoy. I think that I spent a lot of my, albeit short amount of time in life doing things I don't enjoy. In my teenage years, I was a high-level tennis player. I was 1,000 in the world when I was 16, and I hated it. And I spent hours of my life doing this thing that I hated. And then in the tea business, I also did not enjoy tea. I don't enjoy drinking tea, but my life revolved around this tea business. And I think that same with making my career decisions when I was thinking about going into management consulting or things like that. It seems like I kept falling into this trap of doing things that I didn't think I was going to enjoy, just because it seemed like I had the opportunity to do it, or because it seemed like the right thing to do. And I think that the biggest piece of advice that I could give you is, center your life around something that you find happiness in. I know that this is perhaps a little bit cliche, and there's definitely people in the world that can't do that. I am privileged enough to, I think, have a job or center my life around something that I'm truly passionate about. And I think that this is something I'm going to take away, perhaps even Gamlytics, and always ask myself, hey, is this something I really want to do? Does this make me happy? Am I interested in this? Not just do it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, and sometimes like there can be some nuance between like happiness and enjoyment, or like I think what one person that we follow says, you know, if you can make work play, that's a really that can be really enjoyable. But
yeah, the concept actually I like to think about that I've read a little bit on is ikigai, which is a Japanese principle, secret happiness to life, right? Which is do something you love, something you're good at, something you can get paid for, and something the world needs. And when I think about that with Gamlytics, I think that I fit 3 of those things. I think I do something I love. I like to think I'm pretty good at building this platform. Hopefully, I think in the next week when we close our first customer, we can get paid for it. Does the world really need an esports HR platform? That one I'm on the fence about, right? But I think that if I can answer 3 of the 4, that's probably good enough for me. But that's sort of a concept I like to go with.
Great. On that note, we really want to thank you for taking the time to come on Rising Giants podcast. It's been a great conversation, learning about esports, gaming, etc. So we wish you all the best with your with the future.
It was a lot of fun, guys. Thanks so much for having me, and it was great.
Yeah, thank you, Casino.